Welcome to the Samson Strength Coach Collective. On today's episode, we have Kevin Darmody. Kevin has one of the coolest stories I've heard in strength conditioning. So Kevin and I originally met, and by the way, another coastal coach. Okay, I talked to you last week about how cool the coastal coaches are. We went back to back with coastal strength coaches. I told you. I try to tell the people how awesome these guys are, and I'm really excited for you guys to hear about the rest of the staff. Now, Kevin and I originally met when he was warming up women's basketball during one of our conference games, which was, I saw him. I saw an older gentleman. I said, that's got to be the director. Anytime you see an older person within the field, you assume it's the director, somebody who's been around doing it for 40 years. Introduced myself. And while we were talking, he told me again, one of the coolest stories I've ever heard. He got into strength and conditioning, as his second career. And so, he's been in strength and conditioning for a few years now, absolutely doing a fantastic job. And it was just so cool for me to speak with somebody who took a completely different career, went into strength and conditioning, entered a field with honestly a high barrier of entry, and has done a great job. And it was so cool for me to talk to him. And he's also just a really genuinely good dude. Told you about the coastal strength coaches. All right. So, without further ado, let's get to it. As always, thank you for listening. Hello, Samson Strength Coach Collective listeners. On today's episode, we have Kevin Darmody. He's Assistant Director of Speed, Strength, and Conditioning at Coastal Carolina University. Thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, Connor, it's appreciate you the opportunity here to talk to you and give me the opportunity to tell a little bit about my story.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm really excited for the listeners to hear this because I think it's an incredible story, and especially if something that I think to me is inspiring because it's, well, we'll get into it. I don't want to spoil it whatsoever. But Kevin and I have gotten to know each other, whether it was we met at a game, right? And then we kind of progressed from there. But then to be able to continue to talk to you, it's been awesome to get to know you. And so I'm really excited for the listeners to hear your story as well.
Oh, good. Thank you. I look forward to it too. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, first things first, can you kind of just give us your background and fill us in on your story, and then what brought you to Coastal Carolina?
Yeah, sure thing. So, probably be a little bit long-winded, but I'll kind of just tell you a little bit about me personally. I was born and raised in Northern Virginia. I attended the University of South Carolina. I've my wife Karen. I've been married for almost 41 years now. We have 4 grown kids that range in age from 26 to 33. And we have 3 grandsons now, so that range from 4 months to almost 3 years now. So a little bit on the personal side, that has been the joy of my life, being around those kids and watching them grow up and being a father and leading them through their journeys in life. And actually watching them become fathers and mothers now has been kind of a really blessing. So a little bit about my athletic career. I was a pretty good basketball player in the DC area, first team All-City, highly recruited basketball player, came out, chose to attend the University of South Carolina, played all 4 years at the University of South Carolina in Columbia, and then was fortunate enough to go overseas and play a little bit over there for a while and come back from there. Then I kind of got started in my professional career, and I wasn't sure where that was going to end up, whether it was going to be in coaching or in sales. And I ended up in sales, spent 35 years in the consumer products goods industry, working in a different sales management function, running large sales teams across the country. And then had the opportunity to retire about 3 years ago. And that's kind of what my journey is into the strength and conditioning world. I kind of reversed engineered this thing. I'm starting at the end where most people begin. But I knew I wanted to do this. I knew I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach. And this all started about 10 years ago when I came across an article that talked about an Encore career. What are you going to do when you retire? And I asked myself honestly that question, and I couldn't answer it. I didn't know what to do. I'd spent my life with my kids in swim meets, and I thought that's going to end soon, but what am I going to do? And I was with my youngest daughter. We were on a junior day visit at James Madison University for her swimming, and we got the tour of the school and went in the weight room, and there's a strength coach over there talking to the parents. And I walked out of there and I said, I want to be that guy. I want to be that strength coach. And, but then I started, kind of reflecting on it. It's okay. How do I become that guy? Right. One, what does it take to become that guy? One, you got to have a degree in exercise science or kinesiology or biomechanics or something similar related field. You have to have a certification. You got to have experience. And by the way, you're about 40 years older than most of the people that are joining that industry. So I had none of those things, but I kind of sat back and said, okay, if I really want to do this, how can I accomplish it? And I said, okay, I got to go back to school. I had an undergraduate degree, but it was an interdisciplinary studies, nothing related to exercise science. So went back, enrolled in school about 8 years ago, and got a master's degree in exercise science. After I finished that, I sat and took the NSCA CSCS exam. I passed that on the first try. And then I retired officially from the corporate world about 3 years ago. And then took a little bit of time off in the summer to kind of enjoy. I had two of my boys were getting married. My oldest daughter was having her first child out in Hawaii. So I wanted to make sure I made all those events during that time. And then came back, and I was fortunate enough to have been kind of tapped in by the U.S. Army was installing a lot of strength and conditioning coaches, athletic trainers, physical therapists in their H2F initiative. And I got one of them reached out to me on LinkedIn, and I talked to them. And next thing you know, I'm in a car packed up driving from Surfside Beach to Tacoma, Washington. And I spent a year out there at Joint Base Lewis McChord working with the Triple Nickel Engineering Brigade, working with their soldiers, training them. But it was just so far away, all my kids being on the East Coast. I just wanted to get back here. And my true love was always going to be college athletics. And I came back to Surfside Beach, where I reside now. And it's only about 15 minutes away from coastal Carolina. As I reached out to Quinn Barham, who was the new director, who was just named the new director there in January, just blindly emailed him and said, hey, listen, here's my story. Can I come over there and get some experience, intern, volunteer, whatever I can do? And surprisingly, I heard from him the next day. It was just blew me away when the phone rang, and it was like, yeah, hey, come over here and talk to us. So I think they wanted to see if I was for real too, right? So I went over and met with them. Next thing you know, it was a week later, I was in there interning with them just as a volunteer. Say, I'll do what I got to do. And I was very clear that, hey, I want to end in a full-time position, not necessarily coastal, but somewhere. That was my goal. That, I do want to make some kind of living off of this, but I'm not as concerned about that as I am about being able to coach and teach and learn and grow and develop in this industry. And there was a change in coaches this past July, and Quinn called me on a Friday afternoon and offered me a full-time position. And lo and behold, that's how I ended up at Coastal Carolina as the assistant director. I work with women's basketball, softball, and I also help with the football team too. So I know it's a long story, Connor, but you got to understand where I came from and how I got to where I'm at today. It's certainly not a traditional path.
No, it's not. And that's exactly why I want people to hear your story. And I think it's so refreshing to me, and why I love it so much is because, especially being a younger coach in the field, all you hear is about coaches looking for the opportunity to transition out, finding something that is what they would consider to be more stable, or something that has better hours, whatever the issue may be. I feel like for a lot of coaches, it's always kind of like, oh, well, my dream is to own a brewery, or I've heard of dog daycares before. It's all these different things that are outside of strength and conditioning. So it's so cool for me, and I think for our listeners, to hear a story of somebody who, was on the opposite end of that, had a very successful career, retired, and then said, well, I always wanted to be a strength coach as well, and then actually achieved success and is now a full-time strength coach.
It's like I told you, it wasn't like I didn't wake up and roll out of bed and said, hey, I'm going to be a strength coach. I realized that there was a lot of work that needed to be done. And fortunately, it just kind of came to me, and I just had to take the process step by step, knowing that it wasn't going to happen overnight, knowing I had to check the box along the way on these certain things. I had to get the education, had to get the certifications. And then, I had to, then I think the part was just convincing people that I'm serious, that I can do this job, right? That I'm physically able, I'm mentally capable, and I have the drive and passion to want to be doing this. And as long as someone would give me that chance and talk to me and see that, and I think that's what Quinn Barham did. He got to see me for 4 or 5 months, hustle, do all the things, stock to nutrition, set the weight room up, wipe it down, clean it, do whatever I needed to do. And I understand that. I didn't come in there with okay, just because I've been so successful in the business world for 35 years and ran big, large divisions and managed multiple people across the country, it doesn't mean that I'm going to be a good strength coach either. And just because I played college basketball doesn't mean I'm going to be a great strength coach. But I do have some things that I've learned along the way, the 35 years I spent in corporate America, about dealing with people, about reading the room, understanding, how do you get to them. And then My 4 kids, they were all college athletes too. So I got to experience not only my own experience of going through college and the ups and downs and the trials and the tribulations and the moments when you say you want to quit and the moments when you're pissed off at the coach. And then I got to live it for all 4 of my kids swam 4 years in college at a very high level. So I got to see them compete, be disappointed, to miss Olympic trial cuts by 600ths of a second. And so I got to deal with that as a parent. And I think that was part of what I would talk to, the coaches about, is say, listen, please look at me. I understand I've got to, let's get one thing straight. I don't want to be the director of any program. I want to be assistant strength and conditioning coach. And I'm very happy with that and very content with that. And I don't aspire to be anything more than that. But I do bring some other things to the party that maybe someone fresh out of college may not have, because of my experiences with my kids, myself, and then being around the professional world for 35 years.
Well, I agree 100%. And I think the biggest issue, or not the issue, but the biggest piece of this that comes to mind for me is, well, college athletics is, again, like you said, there are the trials and tribulations, there are the ups and downs, and coaches through their experience can kind of help their players through that specific time frame. But that's 4 years if you're in a collegiate sector, right? And then a lot of players don't, it's there's the reason it's professional sports is because it's the elite of the elite make that level, and then 99% of collegiate athletes end up choosing a different career. And so you have the perspective of what it legitimately is to be in the workforce, to be in a position that's completely outside of athletics. And then you were a college athlete yourself, so that transition. And so I 100% agree, because I think there's a lot of things and different perspectives that you can bring that'll really benefit the athletes versus just a regular strength coach.
Yeah, it was funny when I first started there. I mean, I was in the weight room as an intern, and all the football players would walk up to Quinn and say, "Who's that guy over there? Who's that old man? Who's that old man standing in the corner over there?" But once they got to know me and talk to me, and then they were asking me, "Hey, well, what did you do? How did you get in that field? What did you like about it? What was your major?" Just different things, that they're trying to learn their way too, right? They know they're going to get out. Football's going to end in a couple of years, and what do they need to be thinking about? What are the kind of fields, work do they want to go into? So I was, able to. Then they started kind of seeing that, hey, this guy is relatable. He does understand. He does understand an athlete's needs and desires and motivations, and he's not just, a guy that just woke up off the couch and walked in the weight room and said, "Hey, I lift weights, so make me a strength coach."
Exactly, which was kind of what I did. So it's a more valuable life experience to bring. Can you kind of just walk me through the initial steps? So you spoke about on your daughter's junior day visit. That's when it kind of occurred to you, and then as you progressed, it was your Encore career, as you call it. Understanding, okay, now I have to get my master's degree. Now I have to pass a CSCS. What was that process like, especially learning a field that you're familiar with because you've been, a fitness forever type person, but then learning the actual mechanics behind it, learning the things that the CSCS cares about, like the distance of the mirrors from the floor. How was that process?
It was mind-boggling. I mean, you got to understand, when I was in college, we didn't have laptops, cell phones. I mean, we used key punch cards for the computers. So I enrolled in school, and I remember when I got the notice that I got accepted, I was like almost in tears. It was like, oh my God, someone believes in me. So it was kind of like a sign. Okay, this is a good sign. Start, and then I start the class, and everything's online, and these things called discussion posts, right, and peer-reviewed articles, and I was like, what the heck is all this? And fortunately, my kids are all recently educated, so I'd be tapping into them. Hey, help me out. What is APA formatting? What does that mean? So they were a great support through that process. But I mean, and then you go on to take the online quiz, and you're thinking, that should be no problem. And then the clock starts ticking. And you've got 30 seconds to finish these next 10 questions. It's like, but I wasn't the best student when I was at South Carolina. I struggled. I got through it. I graduated, but I didn't probably apply myself like I did. I found myself applying myself a lot more, and I had a lot more demands on me than I did back then. Although I was a college athlete. With 4 kids, they were still in college. They were, 3 of them were still in college, still swimming. So I was going around the country, going to all their swim meets, still had my job, and still had to provide for the family financially too. So I think I've mentioned to you, and when we talked a little bit at the basketball game, I was at the SEC swimming championships in Columbia, Missouri, watching my son swim. and I go watch prelims, and I'd be over at the Student Union Center studying for an exam. There, everyone else is going to happy hour. Well, where's Kevin going? Well, I had a mission in mind, and I knew I wanted to do it. So I did that, and then after I got my degree and finished, I said, okay, I need time to study this book and really understand the essentials of strength and conditioning, and just plowed myself into it. I'd be Saturday mornings over at the Surfside Beach Library from 9 to 12 studying. If I was traveling with business, I'd have it on the airplane, just reading it, and I was scared to death to take the test. I mean, when I went it, I actually took it at Coastal Carolina. Believe it or not, they have a Pearson testing center over there, and I remember going in there taking it, and then the thing about it, in the days when I was in school, you'd have to wait 2 weeks to get your results, and they'd mail them to you, right? Oh no, they're going to hand them to you right there, so you're going to know if you failed or not. And I was afraid to look at it, and I looked at it. And I said, "Oh my God, I passed both parts." I mean, I had tears because I knew that was I joke about it, but it's like little check marks in the box, right? Degree, certification, check. Okay, now I've got two things. Now I've got to fight the next two things. One, gain experience. Two, convince the industry that I do offer some value, and to look at me maybe a little bit differently than you would maybe a typical applicant.
Well, and the thing that everybody talks about is how hard it is to pass the CSCS on your first time, and not having the background within lifting specifically. I remember being scared to death because my boss at the time paid for it. And so I remember just being terrified. Like, I absolutely cannot go back to this man and tell him I did not pass the test. But again, that's when you talk about providing value and showing that you're serious about it. I think that's a great reflection of exactly what you wanted to do, is that you showed your value, you showed you were serious about the test, and you passed the test on the first time.
Yeah, and when I talk to people nowadays, and they look at me and say, well, what are you doing? How'd you get here? I said, well, how much time do you have? Because it's a little bit of a longer story, but I just tell people, this is not something that, like I said, I didn't roll off the couch and say I want to be a strength coach. This has been 10 years in the making to be. And honestly, if I could have wrote the script 10 years ago, it would be I'm to be doing exactly what I'm doing right now. I mean, that's no BS. I mean, I live in Surfside Beach. Coastal Carolina is a great university with great teams. And to be able to live here and be able to do what I'm doing right now, I am beyond blessed to be able to do it. I mean, because thinking about where I was 10 years, I didn't know where I was going to end up. I ended up in Tacoma, Washington, of all places. First of all, just to get some experience. I said, well, that's the first place that's willing to give me an opportunity. I got to go. So it was like a college kid. I packed up the car. My wife and I drove across country and set up shop in Tacoma, Washington.
I mean, it's just so awesome to me to see you actually apply yourself to this, right, and then be successful within it too. Because I think that's the scary part of it, right? Is in even people my age changing their careers, is you're putting yourself out there, and there's an opportunity it may not work out,
Right.
and then I think you being a former college athlete and being somebody who obviously performed in front of large crowds, you have the willingness to step out there and say, okay, well, failure is a potential, and that's an okay thing,
Yeah.
and usually that means that what I'm getting at the end of this is a high quality product. It's something that I want, and it's worth time.
Yeah.
I think I have, to me, what I really appreciate is kind of the forever learner aspect of it as well. I kind of have a soft spot because for me, my mom, I actually got a picture right here. Okay, I'll show you. So this is my mom graduating from nursing school. She
Oh,
got her
wow.
doctorate. And so she got a doctorate when she was 65. And
Wow.
so, yeah, it was just awesome for me. And it was a great example for me because now she always nags me, and she's like, because we both had master's degrees, and now it's okay. Well, when you're getting your PhD, but it's really, I don't know, I guess inspiring to me because it shows me that it doesn't just mean wherever you are, you just have to be stagnant, or you can just learn within your own field. You can continue to learn, you can continue to develop your horizons and get better. And then it really opens you up to really incredible life experiences.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Like I said, that article I came across it, accidentally. It just, I
Yeah.
read it and then it just made my mind go like, okay, what does that look like for you, Kevin? And I couldn't, I mean, I sat on it probably for 6, 7, 8, 9 months, just thinking about it. Like I could never answer that question. I mean, I wasn't like I stewed over it, but every now and then, okay, what are you going to do when that time comes? Whatever that time is, right? It's coming. And literally, it just, like I said, it came to me that day at James Madison University, driving home from back to Charlotte, North Carolina with my daughter. And it made sense to me once I started putting it all together because of I mean, I love what athletics, means, to individuals, what it can mean for them, building those, teammate. I still have 4 or 5 guys that I played with 40 years ago that I still talk to on a regular basis. And I know that bond and the team and what that meant. And I'm so glad my kids got to experience something like that at a very high level. And they have some of those same, I mean, I watched my son, at Auburn, and the kids that they're still together and close. My son at Texas, my daughter at the academy, my daughter at James Madison. The friends that they have today are their college friends, their college teammates. And those bonds are just so tight. And to be able to do that, and then be around that most of my life, one myself, and as a parent, it just made sense for me to keep going that direction. You
Yeah.
could have gone a different way. I could have gone, oh, I'll just go be a coach, right? And you don't need a degree for that, or you don't need a certification. But I also was always intrigued just by the human performance because, the NSCA was, I think, started in 1978, or it was formed in, or 78, 79. Well, I entered college in 1979. So it was just coming into colleges at that particular time, strength and conditioning. And so the way we trained, which was probably good at the time, and I look at the way my kids were trained, I was like, wow, I wish we had that knowledge, that scientific research back then, and the way it's being applied today, and watching how far, fast, high these jump, and how far they're hitting the balls nowadays than what they were doing in the past. And all it's driven by, this understanding of the human body and what the body is capable of doing. And that just kind of intrigued me. How could I do that? And that's how I kind of started down that path.
Well, I'm curious, you bring it up and you mentioned, as well when you were in college, it was, no laptops, no cell phones, and you've seen the progression obviously. But what was the difference that you've seen versus the time you've played and then now being in the field at at this current year? What were kind of the main differences that you've seen in the training for teams?
So back then we had the old Nautilus equipment. So right, so it was all pretty much open chain activities, very little barbell activities, no plyometric work. We may jump rope to warm up at the beginning of practice and then just get going. Uh, and we would do that 2 to 3 days a week in the preseason. Not much lifting during this season like you see today, especially in basketball. Um, in all sports, really. I mean, my kids were swimmers. They just lifted, throughout the whole, whether it was this USA Swimming long course season or this college short course season, they lifted all the time. So, uh, just the technologies that are available, the programming, the periodization, and stuff like that. It didn't seem to exist that well back then when we were there. We lifted, we did our traditional movements, and then we went and played basketball.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and then obviously now, if a strength coach were to see that, they would have a heart attack, especially the people who are bought into the microdosing process. It's something like you said, it's lifting almost every day in season. And it has led to different results. It's led to different emphasis, in my opinion, has led to better
Oh,
basketball, has led to better, sports all around as a
One,
whole.
I mean, today's athlete. I mean, I can't even. I couldn't even imagine trying to play against those guys these days. I mean, they're so physically
Yeah.
gifted. I mean, agile, fast, explosive, strong, powerful. I mean, it's just unbelievable. I mean, we played a lot different basketball back in the day than they're playing today. It's completely different.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up the Nautilus equipment as well because my mentor Dan Worth at University of Tennessee, he's actually the first person I ever interviewed on this podcast. He was a football player at the University of Iowa, and they trained solely on Nautilus equipment. And he spoke about how he would kind of sneak guys out of the weight room, and then he would go to the local high school and they do dumbbell and barbell
Oh,
training.
really?
Yeah, yeah, because at the time he was somebody who when he started when he was super young, invested in weightlifting and kind of tried to understand all the new cutting edge. And so Nautilus was obviously seen as the cutting edge at the
It
time,
was,
but
yeah.
he kind of bought more into the free weight training. And and obviously now he's still a strength coach today. But it's just funny you bring that up
Yeah.
because whenever I speak with people who played during that time, it's always the Nautilus
Oh,
equipment.
it is. Yeah, state of the art back then.
Yeah,
It's
no,
vintage now.
it was the
The
main
old lat
thing.
pullover machine.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Which I still buy into.
Oh,
Okay,
I think about that today and watching different movements that we do today. I wish we did have some of that machine there.
absolutely. I mean, it's great core training.
Yeah.
Uh, did you ever consider a different career at any point when you were looking at your Encore career?
No, I didn't really. Nothing really appealed to me. I mean, I could have chosen the path of just being retired too. I mean, that was an
Yeah,
option for me, just to be retired, travel around, go hang out with my kids, see the grandkids, and I want to do that, and I love them dearly, but I just felt like I needed to be something a little bit more active. I'm not I like golf, but I'm not good at golf, so I'm not going to go play golf 3 days a week. Uh, I don't really want to go play pickup basketball either because I'll be sore for a week afterwards I play. So no, once I dialed in on that day, I never thought about anything else other than that. I mean, I was
Mm.
outside of making sure that I still kept my professional job and took care of my family and provided for them. That was the only other thing I thought about. I
Wow.
mean, that and just,
And
keeping myself healthy and training too and applying because I didn't get the opportunity to go to school and do internships and stuff like that. So I had to apply this stuff. I was like my own science, model. I did, okay, this says to do this. Well, I've never done that before. Let me try that. And so I was
yeah,
kind of like my own little experiment. And I knew that in order to be taken serious, I needed to, also you have to look the part too, right? I'm 6'7". I just can't walk in there and be 300 pounds and hey, I'm a strength coach and start demonstrating plyometrics and box jumps and depth jumps and not be able to do those things. Or hey, we're going to do hang cleans from below the knee, and I can't do it. I mean, how am I going to get credibility that way? And so I just
yeah.
I take that side very seriously. I mean, I make sure that I maintain my ability, and if I'm a lot, I like today. Just I actually we had a training conditioning session with the women's basketball team, and after they were done, I did the exact same workout that they did, and I just wanted to put myself through it to see, you know, how I would respond to it versus how they responded to it, and then that way at least I could say, hey, were they giving me the best that they had today, or uh, so I want to make sure that I stay on top of that. And once I lose that, then I think I've lost my edge in this industry, and then I don't add the value that I possibly can bring to the day. And I've always told Quinn over at the Coastal, I said, hey, my number one job for you is wherever I can add value to your team, that's what I want to do. I'm not driven by managing, having a certain sport or I got to do this. Wherever I just want to work with athletes. And whatever sport or team that is, I'll be glad. I never like I do softball now. I never thought I'd be doing softball. I didn't. I never. I played baseball as a little leaguer, and I was terrible. So, but I love working with softball. I love working with basketball. I love working with football. I just love all the sports. And wherever that is that on any team that I'm working on, wherever I can add that value, that's where I want to be.
Well, I mean, the beautiful piece about, like you say, staying fresh and staying active is that, when you stay active, it actually helps you maintain those qualities, right? And so,
Right.
it's so interesting because you spoke about when you sent the email to Quinn, it was concerns about, hey, here's my age, but I'm actually an active person. I can do those things that you're looking for. And then when I met you, I genuinely would have guessed that you were 50, 51, 52, because you
Yeah.
have the physical presence and you have I mean, you have the ability to do all the things that you've mentioned before. So I can imagine kind of what your fear would be a little bit if you did email Quinn and say, "Hey, I am this age, but I'm not. It's not what I'm. It's not me. I'm not defined by
Right.
that." Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it's funny too. I travel with the teams, and we'll walk to the hotel lobby or we'll go into the venue, and they all look at me like they think I'm the head coach or something because I'm 62 years old, gray haired. Hey, that must be the head coach. Or
Yep.
I'll go down the hotel lobby early to get coffee while everyone else is still sleeping. And the hotel, hey, where do you want breakfast at this morning? I'm like, hey, wait a second here. I'm a coach, but not that coach. You need to talk to someone else there.
Well, I mean, I've spoken about this, but when I first met you, I was like, well, he's definitely the director of strength and conditioning there. I just, and anytime you see an older coach, that's kind of what you assume. And then when you told me
Yeah.
it was only your second, third year in strength and conditioning, that's what, I mean, immediately made me gravitate towards you because I thought
Yeah.
it was so awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
that trip to Washington, okay, obviously you said it was just like college, getting out there, moving out there. How was your first day leading your first training session? And then, how was your experience there as a whole?
it was, I was kind of put, to the fire, right? I mean, they needed strength coaches. So I got there and we had our introductory meeting. And they said, okay, you go over here to the forward support company. That's your company. They have PT at 6:30 in the morning. And, fortunately, because I've been in situations like that before in my professional career where you're always kind of, your boss will test you or they'll put you out somewhere that, hey, you go do this, or hey, what do you think about that? Go present that to these people here. I've been in situations like that before. So I was comfortable and confident to know that I could handle the interpersonal side of it. I wasn't 100% sure I could handle the technical and the
Mhm.
tactical part of the programming, all that stuff. And honestly, I had to really work really hard at doing that, because there you're very limited with the resources that you have. I mean, we worked out of a little beaver fit box. It's, cold and rainy and 40 degrees every day in Tacoma, Washington, and you're outdoors. You got maybe 3 racks, a couple bumper plates, a couple kettlebells all spread out over the place. And you kind of have to be creative. And you got, 100 soldiers that you got to train that morning. And how do you get them through that? So you got to send some. Okay, we're going to do conditioning with this platoon here. You're going to go run here. Here we're going to do this circuit over here with this with this equipment that we have, and you just try to make the best of it. But it required a lot of thought and a lot of work. I mean, I watch people that have been in this industry just come in and can work a room and just dissect it apart and have the best workout in the world. I can't do that right now. I have to think it through logically, prepared in my head, how it's going to lay out, how it's going to flow, making sure that, that everything's running as efficiently as possible, because I know that's what the Army wanted. So, but, honestly, I was probably a little bit over my head when it came to that. But I wasn't uncomfortable in that because I knew I needed to do that. And I just was going to have to work through it, make mistakes, learn. And I worked with a great group of, again, these were all, most of them were probably in their mid 20s that I was working with, the other strength coaches in our company. And they're, to this day, I still talk to them. They're like great friends. I've got to know them. Some of them have moved on into different roles. A lot of them came from the college ranks, um, but I still talk to them regularly. I've talked to 2 of them last week, and they helped me out a lot. I mean, they kind of, brought me in and, taught me some of their knowledge, things that they learned in their internships that I didn't get a chance to experience. And just, hearing someone talk about triphasic training, that he did an internship at the University of Minnesota. And I'm like, that wasn't in the NSCA book, I don't think. What is that? And so it just opened my mind. Then I'd have to go get the book and read it. I'm like, okay, I'm way behind now. I got to learn this here. But they were a big help. Zach Nielsen, who was our lead, was awesome to work with, and then just the other strength coaches that I worked with were just really, really good to me. They would joke with me, call me the HR person, because I was always like, hey, I don't think we can do that. I don't think we can say those things here in these meetings like this, because I'm used to the corporate world. They said, oh, Kevin, this is strength coaches. We can say these things.
It's certainly a different work culture, I'm sure.
Oh, it was completely, yeah. But it was a great year spent. I mean, the soldiers I worked with, it was great to get to know them, get to know their story. I mean, these are 18-year-old kids, probably, have come from some kind of family along the way. The military was their way out, at least to try to get a start on their lives. A lot of them married, a lot of them had kids, and just to get to know them and talk to them, where they're from, how they ended up there, where they're from. And I would sit over there in the mornings after training and just talk to them.
Yeah.
And just,
Well, and that's what makes the difference as a coach, right? And that's what
yeah,
I mean is the most fun part is actually getting to learn everybody else's story and understand
yeah.
what makes them tick.
Yeah. But it was
Yeah.
it was a great year. I was fortunate to get that experience. Fortunate to be put. It could have gone different ways. I could have been put in a different brigade and may not have got that same experience. But it was phenomenal. The people, they embraced me. They worked with me. They taught me. They helped me grow. They helped me get better as a coach. It was just, I would love to kept doing it, but it was just too far away.
Yeah. Well,
And
it's completely understandable. Tacoma, Washington's not an easy
yeah,
drive.
yeah, not so with all my kids living on the East Coast, it was just, and they were starting to have grandkids, and my wife likes, that's her love of life, is being around them and visiting with them and helping them, as they begin to bring up their children in their lives, be part of their, help them out the best they can. So it was just hard to do that. So it just made sense to come back, and I wanted to do college anyway. All along was the end goal. And like I said, I was just fortunate that Quinn, one, answered my email, and then two, gave me an opportunity.
I mean, it's so awesome, and it just really, again, it excites me, and it's always what's really cool to me about the strength and conditioning profession as a whole, right? Is that you do get coaches of completely different backgrounds who all have the common goal of just trying to make their athletes better and trying to provide the best quality care for their athletes, and so that's why it's so cool for me, and it's really a good lesson for me too, right? Because sometimes before games, I'll kind of get into the competitive side, and I'll be like, man, I don't even want to talk to their strength coach, right? And then ultimately something I was like, man, I have to go talk to, I have to go introduce myself. And then once we did, obviously, I got to learn about you and learn about your story. And so it was a good lesson for me as well too, is that, I thought you were the director, and, I didn't even know anything about you. And now we got to learn way more about each other.
Yeah. Well, and I'm so glad you did. I mean, it meant a lot to me just for you to come up and say hello to me. I mean, and I've been in other places too, and in the Sun Belt Conference, and met some other coaches too that have come up, and I've got to do a better job at me taking some initiative there and going to introduce myself. But I just don't feel like I offer a lot. And it's like, I don't have a big wide network.
Yeah.
My network is so limited right now because I'm just so brand new in this industry. And I know everyone's trying to learn and get to know people, and try to build their careers, and I certainly understand that. So I don't add a lot of value when it comes to that, but it's nice to get to know the others and talk to them, and just hear, realize, hey, we're all in the same game. We're all probably facing some of the same challenges, finding, working through the athletes, working through the coaches, working through the schedule changes, the travel, the last minute changes. Are we, stimulating them enough, too much? Are they too tired? Whatever. We all probably have to deal with that on a daily basis, regardless of what school we're at.
100%. You and I were even speaking yesterday morning, right? And you said you
Hmm.
had a couple questions. You said, "Well, I'm not asking for any secrets." And I'm like, "There's no secrets, because we're all doing the same thing ultimately. It's
Right.
just about how I get it done and how you get it done."
Yeah, that's what I've learned too. Is that it comes down to what's right for the athlete, for the program at the time, and the goals of the team, and how you execute those things with them.
Absolutely. One thing I am curious about, and you've spoken about the success of your children, especially within their swimming
Yeah.
careers. How was that for you as a father to kind of watch as a former elite athlete, watch your children fall into that same area within a different sport, which I think is awesome as well. And then, watch them progress and, go on to win national championships and do amazing things.
Yeah, it was probably the highlight of my life is just watching it. We never sat down like when we had our four kids and said, okay, they're going to be athletes. When they were young, I still believe in the long-term athletic development view. I mean, even though they all ended up swimming and having a long career, my oldest daughter played basketball. My sons played basketball. My one son played all the way through middle school. The boys one played football. They did lacrosse. I mean, I always encouraged them to find whatever that was, that drove their passion and that they could enjoy doing. How they all end up doing swimming, I don't know, but because I'm not a swimmer, my wife is not a swimmer, but it just kind of became, because we had four kids in 7 years, it all of a sudden became somewhat of a little bit of a convenience for my wife to, one's going to the pool, two's going to the pool, well, three and four are going to go to the pool now too.
Yep.
And they all just kind of started that, and they kind of built their own, I look back at each one of them, they all kind of took a path through that sport, and each one's a little bit differently. Like my daughter chose to go to the United States Naval Academy, right? That was not even on a radar screen. She never thought I'm not military. But she got interested in it, explored it, went there, spent all 4 years, swam all 4 years, had a very successful career in the Patriot League, swam in the World Military Games in Wuhan, China. Um, she's the one I talk about missing a trial cut. She missed it by 600ths of a second,
Oh,
and didn't get to go to the Olympic trials. And so you talk about trials and tribulations, and that girl, she worked her butt off in order to get it. She didn't get it. Then I go to my two boys. They went to the trials in 2012 and 2016,
wow.
and in multiple events. Uh, Both, one swam at Texas, one swam at Auburn. Both won national championships while they were there. So they had a very successful career. But they both were on the national junior team and competed internationally with USA Swimming. Won gold medals in the Junior Pan Pacific Games and Junior World Championships. And then my youngest one, she had to follow all these people.
Not
And
easy.
Not easy, right? And I marvel in her and how she did it too, because she did it her way. And I tell her to this day is that, because I was always like, hey, you don't have to do this, because talent wise, she was not at the level that the others were, but it didn't bother her.
Mm.
It didn't bother her one bit. She just was going to swim. She loved the fact that her brothers and her older sister were very successful. She relished in that. When they'd come home from college break and go practice with her at the club team, she loved taking them up there with her. And she had a very successful career at James Madison. She was a conference champion in the 500 freestyle, third place in the conference championship in the mile. So she had her own success. It was just in a different level in a different way. So I mean, those all four of them were wildly more successful than I ever was, and that's what I think when I set out for it. I wanted my kids to be successful, no matter whether it was a sport, whether it was musical, whatever they chose to do. Just put your passion into it, work hard at it, and be good at it. And it happened to be swimming, and it provided them great opportunities, great educational opportunities, and to this day, great friendship opportunities too. So I mean, it was 25 years of inhaling chlorine, going to swim meets with them, but I love being there. But it's nerve wracking as a parent, versus playing the game yourself. Like you're watching a 200 freestyle relay, and you can't even see who's in the water because the water's just splashing all over the place. The guys are, swimming it in 19, 18 seconds, and there's four of them, and they're all touching the wall at the same time. And they come down to the finish line, or the pad, and it's hundredths of a second that,
Yeah.
like separates. You got to look up and you go, oh God, we got fourth. Oh geez, I thought we were in first. I mean, nerve wracking as a parent to sit in the stands and do that. I think I'd rather be on the block swimming it than being a parent in the stand when it came to those events.
That's so funny too, right? Because I hate being a strength coach from a standpoint of when I watch games, there's absolutely zero you can do to contribute besides give a couple high fives and then,
Yeah.
hand out some water. And, we had Daniel Roos on the podcast. We both talked about how it'd be kind of nice to, if we could just when the ball tips and then we could just immediately transport to when the game is done.
Yeah. I find myself saying, who are they throwing the ball to? Who's that pass to?
Yeah.
What? We're not supposed to be doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, to my kids, I mean, they've three of them are married now. Like I said, we got three grandkids. The youngest one is getting married this year too in September. So all doing very well in life as a parent, as professionals themselves too. And that's probably what makes me the proudest to see them do that. Like I said, I told Quinn the other day, I said, not the hardest part, but kind of the weird part is watching your son become a dad.
Yeah.
And holding that baby and like, God, I was doing that to him, 25 years ago, and now he's doing it. It was kind of a surreal kind of feeling to me, watching him
Sure.
be that mature. Okay, now he's a father, and watching how he's, loving on the baby and taking care of the baby and watching out for the concerns of it. So it's interesting to watch them grow and become parents too.
I mean, I'm sure. I've always been curious about that process. I've had parents who, I think it was just my mom. Just unfortunately, she's always just kept saying how old they were. So I was like, I might not have parents when I'm 18. And then I obviously grew up and learned that they're not nearly as old as they were. Led me to believe. It was almost like she thought she was 100. So it's always been interesting to me to kind of think about, okay, well, what would it look like for my dad to see me become a dad? It's got to
Yes.
be surreal, like you said.
It is. Trust me. I mean, my daughter, that's one thing, watching her become a mother, but watching my oldest son become a dad, that was, I mean, how old that baby was, that's when it kind of just like, wow.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, you have the three grandchildren. Potentially, they'll all pick baseball and now all be elite baseball players or softball or whatever may come. It might be a different sport.
Like I said, they love swimming. They know swimming was good to them, but I think they'll probably just let their kids kind of find their way. I mean, I just think, like I said, I never thought I'd end up with four swimmers, and then four swimmers that went on to college and did it for all 4 years. That was never, I know my one son that who's almost as tall as I am. He says he's taller than me now. I don't know because I've probably shrunk a little bit, but he loved basketball, and he was not too bad at it, but he was just so much better at swimming. And I had that conversation with him. I said, "Hey, listen, if you want to play basketball, This was in middle school. Go for it. But I'm just going to tell you, if your end goal is to do something at a high level in college, it won't be in basketball because you've been in the pool too long, and there's a lot of guys just like you that have been playing basketball. I mean, I'm not saying you couldn't play at a smaller, Division two, Division three, or something like that. Maybe one, I don't know. But right now, here's where you're at. But swimming wise, you're here."
Yeah.
And he chose to stay in swimming, but I think he loves basketball a lot.
Oh, I'm sure. But you say you're not sure why they chose swimming. I'm going to tell you this: you have the prototypical swimmer's body, and I'm sure your children are the same. It's like a Michael Phelps situation going on. So I'm sure that I think people gravitate towards what they're good at, and I'm sure once they hopped in the pool, they really kind of fit right in.
They did. They kind of took to it. The oldest, my oldest daughter Kelly started it just in a summer league swimming, and just and then we were in Richmond, Virginia, and then we actually got moved. We moved out to Memphis, Tennessee, and then they got into this local swim club, Germantown Club, and that's where the all of them started going. My wife would take them, all four of them, each different practice times, and it was a great program because it was small, well coached, good technique. Not just go, some swim clubs just want to crank out, hey, we're going to go do 10,000 yards today. Just, go burn out your shoulders. Them, it was a little bit more of a fun, like, hey, we have fun Fridays. We do these fun things, but we also swim a little bit too, get a couple thousand yards in maybe. And that was probably good for them. Then we moved to Charlotte. We got transferred after 6 years in Memphis. We moved to Charlotte, and we started with the Mecklenburg Aquatic Club. And that's one of the premier swim clubs in the country. And then it got kind of serious. And they developed great friendships there too. I mean, matter of fact, my oldest son that went to Texas, who he was just down here about a month ago with 6 of his buddies that he swam with at the club. They're all
Wow.
one lives in Pittsburgh, one's in New York City, one's in Charlotte, and they all came down. They're all married. They all got kids now too. So watching that, they used to come over to my house and hang out and play Xbox down in the basement.
Well, but you talk about life experience, right? And what you can bring from even your career in the past, but then I'm sure also raising children and then also seeing them grow to the point where, they've gone through collegiate athletics, they've been successful. You've seen what it takes again to be successful on that collegiate level from your children's perspective. Like, I mean, I'm sure that has been massively helpful in how you coach your athletes too.
Oh, 100%. Because I can look at an athlete and just, I kind of understand what they're going through as an athlete too, right? I mean, the challenges, tribulation. I got class, I got coach on my butt, I got this, I got that, got to lift, I got to go do these things here, and then I can also see the parents, looking, what's my son or daughter doing? Are they working hard? Are they going to class? Are they doing these things? Why aren't they, swimming faster? Or why aren't they hitting the ball farther? Or why aren't they shooting better at the free throw line? So I can see, all these different people chirping in this athlete's ears because I've been there,
Yeah.
and so when I talk to them, I think there's some sense of reality when they see me, and they get to know me a little bit. I mean, I don't walk up to them and say, hey, my kids were college athletes. So I know everything. They find out about me. Like a lot of them, still several of them will come up to me. I didn't know you played basketball at South Carolina. I said, well, yeah, I did. I said, but that's a long time ago. But they find out about me, and then they start, oh, you have 40, oh, and they all, wow, oh, okay. And then I think, once they s- learn a little bit more about me, they kind of, I think, buy it. I have a little bit more credibility there.
Absolutely. I mean, and again, I'm glad that we've had the opportunity to find more about you too. And, hopefully, what I hope from this too is potentially somebody can also look at an encore career option as well, and exactly what you've mentioned is just kind of always having the seed in your mind once you saw the strength coach at JMU and understanding, okay, maybe I can actually get there. And I think it's really cool because you are somebody who takes it seriously. You did the right thing to do, which is to get the CSCS, get your master's degree, everything that was necessary to be successful, and then you turn it into something that's really enjoyable for yourself.
Oh,
And
yes.
so I hope that this story reaches anybody who may even potentially be considering the same thing.
Yeah, like I said, I had no one to really. Maybe there's people out there that I'm sure there are that have done something similar. I don't know. I couldn't find anybody, but so I kind of had to kind of just do it on my own, feel my way through it, and try to figure. It's like, hey, okay. When I was thinking, well, what certification do I get? Like, we were talking
Yeah.
about you're doing one down in Texas, and like, is the C? But I knew every job description I looked at said CSCS or CSCCA, and I knew I couldn't do that one because I'd have to go through the college ranks kind of. So I knew the CSCS where I was going to end up, but I had to research all that. I had to figure that out, and um, so yeah, and I think there could be people out there that have some similar background athletically, or parent had kids that went to college and have a passion for that, and is there an entryway for them to get into it? Maybe that's not as daunting and challenging as you may have to go through, right? You know, not to, because I think it's important that I got the education. It's important you have the certification in order to do this job the proper way. But is there a way that, because hey, let's when you look at the workforce that we're in right now, and you look at the age of it, and you talked about a little bit. Some people do it, and it's hard work. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I work harder now than I probably did in the corporate world, But it doesn't bother me one bit because the work is fun. But I'm in a
Yeah.
different position than most other people are. I'm not having to worry about maybe a wife, kids, expenses, house, debt, all this other stuff that people have to worry about these days. So that's all done for me. But are there people out there that have some knowledge, some experience, and how do you get them into something like this and build maybe some kind of foundation for people to enter this industry in a different way, maybe?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's the most exciting piece of it, right? And is the first person to do it, right, sets the path for other people to do it in the future,
Right.
and so it'd be cool for this story to be not unheard of, and something that, I think is so cool for me to understand, and then potentially it's something where it's just even easier, like you said, for people to follow the same path.
Right.
Wow. Well, Kevin, I mean, thank you so much for coming on. I've really enjoyed it. Again, I've really enjoyed getting to know you, and I'm glad that everybody else who listens to the podcast gets to get to know you a little bit better as well. If anybody did have any questions or wanted to reach out to you, is there a good email that they could use or social media?
Well, obviously, I didn't grow up with the social media influence, so I do, I don't do any posting. Obviously follow people just to keep in touch and learn things. So that would not be a good way to get a hold of me, probably, but probably by email would be the best way. It's KDARMODY 24 at gmail.com. That's my email address. And uh, I do check that. I do respond. So if anyone ever wants to hit me up, I'd be glad to talk to them about it. Uh, share my story, share my journey, anything I can add to help anyone else out along the way. Because a lot of people have helped me get to where I'm at today, and anything I can do to help anyone else along the way, whether it's in this industry or different industry or different thoughts on what they're thinking about doing, I love talking about it.
No, I mean, it's incredible. And there's actually, I actually can think of somebody right now I might connect you with. It was funny. There was a coach who went to the Final Four in Scottsdale,
Oh yeah.
and then he met somebody who is looking to get his certification and looking to do a new career. So, yeah, I might already have somebody for you.
I would love to. Hey, listen, I think we all got a different spin on it, but I love. I mean, I'll share my path, my journey, my trials, my tribulations, things I learned, things I do differently, um, and maybe that would help someone else. I'd be glad to do that.
Amazing. Well, thank you again, Kevin. I really appreciate it.
I kind of thank you so much too. Have a great day.
You too.